Ireland on Sunday, dodging a barrage of threats online and in the real world to keep access to tons of U.S. State Department cables under a Swiss web address now. The founder of the website WikiLeaks said he faced hundreds of death threats. The site hinged on the Swiss Pirate Party's WikiLeaks web address, though the main server in France went offline, leaving the site reachable through a Swedish server only. The site showed that the founder had begun seeking donations to an account under his name through the Swiss. Well, Rabbi Moshe has appeared on Coast to Coast AM several times. Now, during these visits, he has informed us about the renowned Jewish Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. Rabbi Schneerson's message to humanity was that the Messianic era is now upon us. Rabbi will share with us tonight more about the current global economic crisis and how that ties into this era and what lies ahead for mankind on several fronts. Rabbi Moshe is next on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. Back in 1978, Moshe took a one-way trip to Jerusalem in Israel and enrolled in a rabbi college, a yeshiva. Studied Judaism there for about 7 years. In 1991, after witnessing some profound events that happened within the Jewish community, Moshe came to a startling realization which explains what is afoot in our chaotic world from a Jewish perspective. In 1998, he assumed the title of rabbi. He's been on Coast to Coast numerous times with me, and here he is. Rabbi, welcome back. How are you?
Thank God, I'm very good, and happy Hanukkah to you and all your Jewish listeners.
Well, we have many. Thank you so much as well. I need you to our new listeners, explain who Rabbi Schneerson is.
Okay, Rabbi Schneerson assumed the leadership of a Hasidic Jewish group called Chabad Lubavitch in the early 1950s and brought about the greatest renaissance in Jewish religious observance in the history of Judaism. After 40 years of sending out emissary rabbis to every location where even a handful of Jews lived, there was a global network of rabbis who were all connected to his leadership. And startingly in 1991, the underling rabbis who worked for him and listened to him came to a realization that the track record that he had achieved in those 4 decades of leadership qualified him to be perceived as Judaism's Messiah with assurance. Now that's a bombshell of a perception, and when it went public, it had a bombshell reaction where there was a positive and negative reaction from within and without of the Chabad organization. And we have been kind of on a watch mode, Messiah watch mode, since 91, 94. And this global economic collapse that we've been looking at seems to cinch it, at least for my satisfaction. So I would love to share that with you and your audience tonight.
Absolutely. And then let's also go back, refresh us a little bit about some of the things you talked with us about in your prior visits, Rabbi.
Thank you, George. The events I listed that have references in sacred Jewish sources to the imminent arrival of the Messianic era and the Messiah included the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, the rise of the Taliban terrorists, a reference to a war between the Christian West and Iran, which pretty much has been the case by way of proxy in Iraq right now, because Iran has been doing an awful lot of the funding and the underhanded stuff combating America in Iraq. And most startlingly for me, is Shoemaker Levy 9 asteroid in 1994 that slammed into Jupiter. It has a reference in Judaism's Kabbalah, and it's understood as being the heavenly announcement of the arrival of Judaism's Messiah. So we are on a very high state of alert and anticipation, and this economic collapse appears to be a turning point, at least from my understanding.
Is this economic collapse, Rabbi, a signal to the prophecies of Rabbi Schneerson?
Yeah, I would say not only is it a signal, it's a confirmation of the truth of his prophecies, and also the truth of ancient Jewish prophecies that, with your permission, I would like to reference now. Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, the first place we need to look is in the book of Exodus. There's a non-Jewish prophet there. He was the most prominent prophet in his day. His name was Bilam, and he was given a prophecy to foresee two future kings of Israel. The first one that he foresaw was King David. And as we all know from history, King David did become a future king of Israel. The second future king that he foresaw was Judaism's King Messiah. And what Bilam brought to the front in this prophecy and what he communicated was that at the time of the arrival of Judaism's Messiah, there would be a downfall of the nations. Now, the question is this 2008 collapse of the global economy now going on 2 years, is it in fact the fulfillment of that prophecy? From my understanding and having read Rabbi Schneerson's teachings on this, Rabbi Schneerson specifically referenced this prophecy of Bilam and said that the downfall of the nations is connected with the arrival of Judaism's Messiah.
Interesting.
So we have a situation here that requires very, very close scrutiny.
Now, he passed on in what, 1994?
Correct, and that was another incredible test of faith, because Rabbi Schneerson, in no uncertain terms, made it known to those who were students of his, which I still am, that he had received a divine go-ahead to be revealed to the world as Judaism's Messiah. He passes away in 1994, and as you can well imagine, most people said, well, that's over with, forget that, that's not going to happen, the game's over, let's move on with the continuation of the exile.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one problem with that attitude, and this is that we have no fewer than 13 sacred sources in Jewish sacred literature that tell of Judaism's Messiah first being revealed to a few, passing away, and then returning to complete the rest of his required criteria in Jewish law. So our understanding, and what we're told by Rabbi Schneerson specifically, was number one, ignore any death that comes along, and number two, the perceived passing is in fact part of the process of his ultimate revelation.
Rabbi, where was he based at the time during his life?
Yeah, Rabbi Schneerson was based in New York City, in Brooklyn. There's the World Lubavitch headquarters are located there, 770 Eastern Parkway, Brooklyn, New York.
Was there controversy behind the talk of him being the promised Messiah? I mean, were there various sects within the Jewish religion, for example?
George, there's no way to explain to you or share with you how intense, polarized, confrontational, and disruptive in many ways what came out of 770 and the effect that it had not only within Chabad, but outside of the Chabad organization in not only Orthodox Judaism, but the conservative groups and Reform Jewish groups, and even amongst the Christian groups, there's a lot of negative reaction. The bottom line is that Rabbi Schneerson's organization split into two camps. There is one camp that I personally associate with, who maintain that we should not rely on our own finite understanding, but to follow his instructions, because he was and is understood in accordance with Jewish law to have been a kosher, legal, and certified Jewish prophet. And being a kosher, legal, certified Jewish prophet, the law in Judaism requires that he be believed and obeyed, even if it goes contrary to what everyone understands as being logical or the laws of nature.
Where did his prophecy come from, Rabbi? Was it from God? Was he intuitive? How did he do this?
Yeah, Rabbi Schneerson received messages from God. Let me give you a little bit of an insight to this.
Sure.
When Rabbi Schneerson would give over Hasidic discourses, one of the things that would happen is that his soul would ascend to the higher spiritual spheres, the highest of which is called Atzilus. And this is such an intense experience that he had to wrap a white handkerchief around the leg of the table that he was seated in front of so that his soul would not expire. And we have plenty of tradition of this transpiring in Jewish history. The return of prophecy is also one of the signs of the arrival of the Messianic era. And we have 40 years of a flawless prophecy track record that Rabbi Schneerson demonstrated to us, and which is why the 250 rabbis went formal with a formal legal religious ruling. They went public, and they let this cat out of the bag, so to speak.
What was it about him that got you, Rabbi, to believe that he's the promised Messiah?
Now, that's a great question, and I'm going to answer it specifically. Judaism does not operate based on personal interpretations of the Book of Prophets. It does not operate on personal opinions. It does not operate on a popularity contest or even polls or even democracy. Judaism operates according to Jewish religious law. And at my website, on the top right corner, there's an article which is called "How It Came to Happen," and there's an article which in that article there's a citation from a specific part of the law in Judaism that gives us the criteria where we can discern whether or not a potential candidate is the real deal or is a phony. And there is some 8 criteria out of 11 that Rabbi Schneerson had fulfilled. That's what the rabbis were looking at. They were looking at the law. They were looking back on the 40-year track record of his leadership and what he had accomplished, and they found a match, a congruence. And based upon the intensity of that match and that congruence, they released a formal religious legal ruling, which is the most formal way of doing something in Orthodox Judaism. It's called a psak din, and as I said, it created a firestorm of controversy because the world is pretty comfortable in its current sleepy mode.
Right.
It's not, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, it doesn't want to upset that. Have there been false prophets in Judaism in the past?
Yes, sir. There have been false prophets. There are also laws in Judaism that allow us to discern a true prophet from a false prophet. And you better believe that the 250 rabbis who passed this ruling, they know those laws like you and I know the palm of our hands. So they're not out to either embarrass themselves or to create a phony expectation or to defraud anybody or try to change anyone's opinion. We feel that we have a moral obligation to share what transpired in the events with the leadership of the Rebbe, around the Rebbe, and what the Rebbe revealed with mankind so that mankind can have a heads up that something is transpiring. May I add one more short point to this?
Absolutely.
I find it astonishing as a longtime listener to your program how many diverse groups have come on your program, George, and they have expressed an end-of-days understanding from their own traditions. I've heard comments about the white buffalo from the Native American culture.
Yes.
Obviously, I've heard many programs about the Mayan 2012 calendar on your show. I've also heard at other sources that there's an end-of-days awareness. Something's going on amongst the Hindu people. You've had countless guests on your program talking about Nostradamus and how they connecting it to what's happening in the world right now. I've seen this on the History Channel and on the Discovery Channel. All these various diverse ethnic groups are coming to a similar conclusion using their unique tradition and software that allows them to relate to this. So I'm here just to share with you what we know from Judaism's tradition in the context of the Chabad organization.
And they all seem somewhat similar, don't they? That's what's kind of scary in one respect, maybe enlightening in the next, Rabbi.
Well, the similarity is a very interesting point, and I want to qualify what I'm about to say with no intent of arrogance on my part.
Okay.
The word Messiah in English, if you look it up in a Webster's dictionary, collegiate dictionary, you will learn that this word derives from the biblical Hebrew word Mashiach. And the point that I'm trying to make by referencing that is that this concept of a Messiah, of a Redeemer, began in what is called the Old Testament. It is something that is regulated by Jewish law, understood and referenced in Jewish prophecies, and the grasp of this topic, I believe, has the highest authority within Judaism, and there are other people who relate to this from their own orientation who are not privy to that. And I feel that there's a profound obligation for the Jewish religion to do something that has not happened in centuries, and that is to lower walls, to be inclusive, and to share with the rest of mankind what we know is afoot in the world. I mean, there's anybody who can look at the news events, at the global changes that are happening with the weather and the ice melting and the caps and the economy going berserk. It's been 2 years, George, and I don't see any turnaround in the economic collapse. Do you?
No, I really don't, Rabbi. And
right.
And I wanted to ask you, too, in the Bible, of course, there's the book of Revelation that talks about this great apocalypse.
Right.
Is the prophecy of Rabbi Schneerson similar to that as well?
No, sir. Matter of fact, I want to make a clear distinction that there's the reference to the four horsemen of the apocalypse in Revelations is not it does not have a foothold in Judaism's understanding of the Messianic event. That's an orientation that arose out of Christianity. So there needs to be a distinction made there. Now, I told you on your program about 7 years ago, you asked me, well, what's going to happen?
Yes.
I said to you, well, George, this is all going to end up ultimately in unprecedented holiness and goodness. However, we've got a rocky road before we get there. Do you recall me saying that to you?
I sure do. And we've been holding on ever since, haven't we? So we haven't fallen off.
Now, we haven't fallen off the cliff yet, but things are getting to a point to where if you watch people who look into the future, like I've listened very closely to Gerald Salenti on your program, and Catherine Austin Fitz, and other people who want to know where things are going. And there is a concept that we have a convergence happening down the road where this planet is not going to be the same old that it's been for the past 2,000 years. And for my satisfaction, this global economic collapse, which also has a reference in the Talmud Sanhedrin on page 79a, as well as that prophecy from Bilam that I referenced before. My understanding is that this confirms the matter that we've got a situation here.
We've got your website, of course, as RabbiYes.com, and of course, there's related links that we've got for you too.
Thank you, sir.
And I really would like all of you to go to the Rabbi's website and take a look at some of the things that he has. In a moment, when we come back, we'll get into more of the prophecy in just what it means and how it affects us. At least, Rabbi, I like the fact, too, that even though we're going to have this bumpy, rocky road, it's going to be a good road at the end. And I think that's something that gives us all hope, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm going to discuss how good this is going to get.
All right, well, we'll do that. And by the way, if you need to email me, george@coasttocoastam.com, george@coasttocoastam.com. We'll be back in a moment with more with Rabbi Moshe Yes. Next hour, we'll open up the phone lines, give you an opportunity to talk with him as we talk about the prophecy of Rabbi Schneerson. We'll be back. Well, next hour, we'll take your phone calls with Rabbi Moshe, yes, and I'll be back with him. More questions as we get more into the prophecy on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. We're with Rabbi Moshe, yes. Let's talk, if we can, about the global economic downturn. Do you see that as the beginning or right in the middle? What positioning with the rest of the prophecy?
Well, and as I referenced before in Talmud Sanhedrin on page 97a, it speaks about a 7-year period in which the first 3 years contain what can be described as a global economic collapse. It gets better after that, and then something supernatural transpires. Talmud references as it hearing voices, and what that means is open for interpretation.
Okay.
And then what happens after that is the nations of the world will conduct a war against the city of Jerusalem, and they will find themselves waging war against our common Father in heaven. And at that point in time, we're going to have the full revelation of Judaism's Messiah. However, I want to make a sub-comment to this.
Okay.
And this is that we are not locked into that schedule in the Talmud. In the blink of an eye, this whole situation can go from where it is right now to the end game where everything is pure bliss. So all these are just references that need to be contemplated. The reason I'm bringing this to your attention and the attention of your good audience, George, is that Rabbi Schneerson, I want to see if I can paint this picture for you.
Okay.
Every year around the month of December, some 1,400 ordained Hasidic rabbis of the Chabad movement converge on Rabbi Schneerson's world headquarters.
In New York?
91, excuse me?
In New York?
Yeah, in Brooklyn, New York, correct.
Okay.
And I want you to picture Rabbi Schneerson giving a discourse, a Hasidic discourse, to his underling rabbis. And he told them, and I'm going to paraphrase, but this is gosh awful close to an exact quote. We are no longer dealing with a dream of the distant future. The arrival of Judaism's Messiah is imminent. Go back to your communities and tell them to learn about the topic of Judaism's Messiah from all sacred Jewish sources, including the sources that Rabbi Schneerson published from 1988 forward until 1992. So you can imagine these rabbis got up and started dancing, and everybody's happy, and then they went back to their communities, and all of a sudden it was gulped in the sense that, hey, I've got to inform a disbelieving world, a skeptical world, that we have the greatest transition, the greatest epochal transition in human history on our hands. How do I go about that? And unfortunately, it's not been going too well in that particular assignment, which is one of the reasons why I set up my website. I've got 10 years into it, trying to share with the general public, and it's there. No one is going to be able to say that we did not share what we knew and when we knew it.
Is there still a tugging, Rabbi, in the Jewish community over all of this?
Yes, I want to make this perfectly clear and full disclosure, as the saying goes. There was immediate opposition in the Orthodox community to what developed out of the Chabad Hasidic movement. There was an effort, a premeditated effort, to marginalize this by giving it a title of Lubavitch Messianism. That removes it theoretically from mainstream Judaism. It was an effort to exclude, to ostracize this development because, quite frankly, the rest of Orthodox Judaism, with no disrespect intended, is a rear-view mirror-oriented religious practice. It looks back upon the destruction of the first and second holy temples. It looks back upon the annual carousel of holidays, Passover, Sukkot, Shavuos, and it is not forward-looking in the sense of any imminent expectation of the arrival of the Messiah. So you can understand that this announcement created immediate tension and polarity. It's now gotten to the point to where I would say that the rest of the Orthodox community has kind of gotten comfortable somewhat with these crazy Lubavitchers who think that something Messianic is afoot. And they're eventually going to come around.
These other signs, let's go through some of the signs, Rabbi, that are there. So we've got the economic collapse. What about the things that are happening with climate change, with the sun? Do they factor in?
Oh, boy, do they ever factor in. Back in 1979, I was walking down the streets in Mea Sharim with my mentor, a Rabbi Shalom Levine, who made a little comment to me. He was studying about the topic of Judaism's Messiah. And he said to me, you know what I just read today? I said, no, what did you read, Shalom? He said, I read that when the Messiah comes, the winters won't be winter and the summers won't be summer. Does that resonate with you, George?
It sure does.
Yeah.
It's happening.
Okay, the other things. Well, we're kind of getting into a laundry list of negatives here. There is a fear of accurate religious leadership.
But they're real, aren't they? The negatives?
Yeah, the negatives are definitely real.
Yeah, they are real.
The dissolution of the nuclear family, the disrespect between the younger generation and the older generation, the loss of integrity of various religious institutions. All of these are referenced in the Talmud Sanhedrin. So, I mean, it's gotten to the point now to where if you have enough smoke, there's a fire, right?
That's right. That's right. Well, is there anything with all the prophecy that you know of, Rabbi, that concerns you the most?
Yeah. What I'm afraid is going to happen is like this. We have this gradual awakening, like we were discussing the diverse ethnic groups who are relating to some kind of profound change that they perceived, and they are using their own ethnic software, let's say, to relate to it. Now, the Christians have their software, and the Jews have their software, and same for the Maya and the Native Americans. And what's going to eventually happen here is there's going to become a global consensus that we are dealing with a divinely driven event and not a failure of government. That's going to be a profound transition.
Yes.
And at that point in time, the various religions in the world are all going to jump in and try and get their market share and try and get the upper hand in explaining what the heck is going on. And again, with no arrogance intended, I refer your listeners to the fact that the word Messiah began in Judaism, which predates Christianity.
Is there anything to our free will? Like you said, these could change, they can be altered. Can we change them?
Yeah. We can hasten the arrival of the Messiah, and I haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet. We can hasten the arrival of Messiah by increasing in acts of goodness and kindness, and also by learning about this topic from the sacred Jewish sources that I reference. That's why my website, I feel, is a good public service.
And you don't have to be Jewish to understand it, right?
That is correct. I have tried to make this as plain and simple as I'm able to. I've been a communicator all of my life, and I think I've gotten mostly compliments on the website in terms of sharing with the general public.
I'm not sure you even had this when you were first with me 7 years ago. Did you?
I didn't have what, the website?
Yeah.
No, I've had RabbiYes.com. Actually, its first inception was called the Redemption News Network.
That's right.
Which I began in Canada up in 1998.
That's right.
And then when I came down to the States shortly thereafter, I changed it to RabbiYes.com.
Okay. It makes it easier, too.
Yeah, it makes it more connectable, right.
These I wanted to talk with you about the possibility of war with Iran. Does that show up at all in the prophecy?
Oh, boy. Yeah, that shows up in Talmud Yoma, page 10a. And that's going to be a rough one. There's going to be a big price tag on both the parts of America and the Christian West and Iran when that one blows up.
What does it say? What does it say about that, Rabbi?
It says that basically both countries are going to do severe damage to each other.
Both countries being Iran and in the United States or Israel?
I would go as far to say as Iran and the Christian West, which would include Great Britain and other dominantly Christian countries in Europe.
In the damage, are we talking about physical to lives and structure, or because damage could also mean from within, right?
Yeah, well, we already have damage happening from within.
True.
Are you perceiving any lack of leadership or solutions in this country's government presently? I know that I am.
I have felt that for years, not just this administration. I have felt a lack of honesty and integrity on most of our politicians.
Right, and let's not just limit it to the politicians.
No,
let's talk about Wall Street. Let's talk about the fact that the Bible says not to deceive, and certain Wall Street institutions decided to sell air, alleging that it had value, when in fact they knew beforehand that they were going to hurt other people by taking their life savings.
Well, what I find fascinating and amazing, Rabbi, is that this echoes many of the things, for example, many of the kinds of topics we've handled on this program, people who believe in this one world government, this obsession with greed, all these things that have been going on that we have tried to pinpoint seem to be somehow in the prophecy in one way or another.
Now, let me share with you how this plays out. You remember I referenced the war against Jerusalem not too long ago.
Right.
Okay. Why is this war going to occur? It's got to do over a piece of geography upon which stands the Third Holy Temple.
Right.
That Third Holy Temple is going to contain the divine presence and will change, when that occurs, it will change the entire nature of reality in the universe. So we've got evil and we've got good in the world. When evil, like a wrestler, knows that it's about to be defeated by its opponent, called good, or let's call it holiness, what does a wrestler do? He gives his greatest exertion of effort to allow himself to survive.
The final push.
The final push to keep alive. That is why we have seen a very dramatic increase in evil and the, how do I put this delicately, the spiraling downfall of the moral fiber of this country. I am so grateful to the U.S. of A. It allowed me to gain my career dreams. Everything that ever happened good in my life came about as the fact that I moved here with my family when I was 17 years old back in 1962. And now I'm looking at this country in abject shock. What is happening? And what I realize now is that we have evil on the rise, attempting to put a stop on the conquest of evil that will happen when goodness and holiness takes over.
Why does the evil, though, Rabbi, seem to be so powerful?
Yeah, because the holiness is equally powerful and more powerful, except that it's in the concealed realms right now.
Okay.
Let me give you the precedent for that.
Please.
Moses is on top of Mount Sinai, having communion with God. What's happening downstairs with the Israelites?
They're going crazy.
They're going with the golden calf.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
So the potential for an insert of holiness is always reacted to with a parallel rise in evil.
Well, that's a good point. And at what point, then, does the good part decide to raise its head and come out from where it is?
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, my understanding is as follows. Holiness destroys evil. There is going to be a transformation of events in the world where, George, I was driving by a church one day, and I saw on the church signboard something that said like this: the only time that some people look up is when they find themselves lying on their backs. Yeah, isn't that profoundly accurate?
True.
Yes, and what will happen is that we're watching our society disintegrate. My heart goes out to all the people whose dreams of a happy retirement and passing on to their grandchildren what they never had, and more so, all of that appears to be melting away, and people are starting to become less, enamored with the material and starting to focus more on the spiritual. And that represents gradually an increase in goodness, and that will bring about an influx of holiness that eventually will turn evil over like a pancake and get it out of the picture entirely.
Well, when you say holiness, you're also talking about goodness, right?
Goodness and holiness. Actually, the concept of holiness is very, very serious and very much underappreciated in terms of the power that holiness has in the world. Most people don't realize just how intensely powerful holiness is.
This turnabout, is it going to just hit us? Is it going to be dramatic, or is it going to be gradual?
Well, I think it's already demonstrated all of those. My jaw dropped open the day I turned on the Drudge Report and saw that GM had gone bankrupt. That was an impossibility. That couldn't happen.
I know.
That was
Yeah.
a shock. When the stock market crashed, and institutions that were the symbol of American power and strength, all of a sudden they're in bankruptcy court. What kind of business is this? This isn't the America I grew up in. So we have dramatic events. We have gradual events. There's been the greatest return to Jewish religious practice under the leadership of Rabbi Schneerson and his army of rabbis located all around the world. I think that the world has gone definitely into a more spiritual direction than where it's been in the prior decades.
Well, that's a good thing. That's
yes, it is a good thing. And when we get a chance, I want to tell you about the really good stuff that's awaiting us in the future when we get past this bumpy road.
And what's your time span on that? How far out is this bumpy road?
Well, it depends on what yardstick you want to use. If we use the Talmud Sanhedrin that I referenced before, page 97a, we're looking possibly at another few years. Let's say 5 years. If we go by what Rabbi Schneerson told us, this can happen imminently.
So in theory, if we take an average, it could happen within a couple years. On the earliest, now, on the outside 5 years. So we're in this window.
Yeah, this is exactly what you have been sharing with your audience on your break things that I've been listening to, and it's we got a situation here that really requires that Judaism shares what it knows about it with the rest of humanity, and if nothing else, no one will be able to make a claim against us that we didn't tell what we knew and when we knew it. And I want to publicly thank you for allowing me on this program to share this with your good audience, which has demonstrated itself to be, about 8 or 9 months ahead of the mainstream.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I just think your message, Rabbi, is so important. And I think you said something that was just so pointed and poignant to everything we've done, and that is all these various religions and philosophies are all gearing up for a very similar series of events. I find that to be shocking and amazingly fantastic, too, at the same time.
Well, we're reaching the climax of human history and the achievement of the fulfillment for creation itself. That's how big this is.
We're going to come back. We're going to take phone calls, and I do want you to get into some of the good events that we're going to see in the future as well. We'll be right back with Rabbi Moshe, yes, and your phone calls on Coast to Coast AM. Okay, this hour we're going to take your phone calls with Rabbi Moshe Yes as we talk about the prophecy of Rabbi Schneerson. So we'll be back in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back. We're with Rabbi Moshe Yes. We're going to take your calls in a second, Rabbi. But before we do, tell us some of the good things in the future for us.
Okay, and let me just prerequisite this with a short announcement, and this is that the arrival of Judaism's Messiah and the current unfolding of the Messianic era is not a private Jewish party. There's a redemption here in operation for all of mankind. I want to make that perfectly clear so that we don't think that one team is going to win over another team.
Okay.
And
that's an important distinction, too. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, that's a critical thing. We all have a common Father in heaven. He loves all of his kiddies, and we all need to return to him more than we already have, and that includes myself.
Very good.
In his infinite mercy and kindness, God is going to change the very nature of reality as we currently understand it from the prior paradigm, which is now melting away and coming into the next paradigm. Here's what awaits us. Illness is going to cease to exist globally, and all medical people, professionals, will be devoting their skills to increasing human health, not curing illness. We will all benefit from that. There will be enough food and shelter for all of humanity. There will be no more war. Swords will be turned into plowshares, and there will be eternal peace on earth. What is going to bring all of this about is the fundamental change that will be brought about by God, that the spirit of evil will be removed from all of creation, so that people's choices will not include anything negative or harmful, yet we will all be faced with endless possibilities for personal growth and awareness of the divine. That, by the way, awareness of the divine, there's something I want to comment on that a little bit later on if I get a chance.
Okay.
Now,
Well, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm almost done here, George. I need to preface this by stating that what I'm going to be discussing in the next paragraph is not a political statement. It's got to do with a change that will be brought about by our common Father in heaven. And hear me out until we get the overall view of this, if I could ask your audience to give me that. The spirit of evil, as I said, is going to be removed from all of creation. What is going to happen politically on earth is that there is going to be a transformation of the current state of Israel into becoming a truly holy land. Now, I don't mean that in any derogatory sense. The borders will expand to include the Bible's boundaries for the Holy Land, and all of the Holy Land will expand to include, all of the Holy Land will become Jerusalem. Now, here's where it really gets interesting. And this is, again, not a political statement. The rest of the world will then voluntarily become Israel. And the word Israel means straight with God in one of its interpretations. Now, this does not mean the loss of nationality of the nations. America will still be America in every respect, with one profound exception, namely, the sole focus of all humanity will be to know our common Father in heaven. Every nation will enthusiastically and voluntarily bring offerings to our common Father in heaven at the third holy temple in Jerusalem, and the final redemption of the Messianic era will be appreciated as having arrived when that third holy temple is constructed. The Jews will spiritually rise to fulfill their divine task of being a light unto the nations, and the Messianic era has nothing whatsoever to do with military dominance or the gathering of power or riches for self-glory or pleasure. The Messianic era is about man coming to know God, not man ruling over other men.
This couldn't come sooner. You know it?
It's a pretty nice package.
It sure
And
is.
you can understand that due to the magnitude of this and people's comfort zone with the way things have been in the past, it's a little bit difficult for people to wake out of their lazy boy chairs and come to understand, first of all, the magnitude of the transition that we're dealing with right now. Most people say, well, this is just a repeat of 1929. And I would like to share from my heart of hearts with your audience that nothing could be further from the truth. This is not a 1929 event. This is a God-driven biblical event that we are watching on the 6 o'clock news.
Unfolding right under our eyes.
Unfolding before our eyes. Isn't it odd? I want to point this out about Good George. You ever watch Glenn Beck in the afternoon?
Yeah, I know Glenn well. So, every once in a while. I don't watch his show a lot.
Yeah,
I listen to him.
400,000 people in that neck of the woods showed up in Washington, D.C. to reaffirm their commitment to spirituality, honor, the values of the founding fathers of this country. That really knocked my socks off. That's a very, very powerful change in people's mentality from the way things were before the collapse in the fall of 2008. So we've got this changing pattern unfolding that is going to lead to what can be called the ultimate purpose of creation, which is getting us back to the Garden of Eden and a utopian existence where everybody wins and no one is exploited and no one is enslaved to anyone else.
That would be a heavenly thing, wouldn't it?
Yes, it certainly would be. And it's in motion. I've had 20 years to wrap my brain around this, and I'm still focused on this at 24/7.
Let's go to Las Vegas, Nevada for our first question, Rabbi. It's David. Go ahead, David. Thanks for calling.
David, White, I'm a physicist, and I've built a device that gives me free energy. It produces 220 volts of AC current. It runs on magnetic energy, and it runs forever. And I believe that this would change the world, but I wanted to know if maybe the government would take it away from me if I published it.
Probably, I would think. Rabbi, do you think governments really want free energy?
I think governments want whatever they can get control over.
True.
I don't think any government in the world today is putting the needs of its population ahead of its own particular desires. That's something else has gone by the wayside.
Well, that's because greed and corruption has taken over.
That is correct. That's what I'm seeing, and I don't want to be, this is not really a Democratic or a Republican issue. This has got to do with America and the world living in a godly manner as opposed to an exploitating manner.
You look at every leader at nearly every country on this planet, whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's Venezuela, whether it's the United States, whether it's Russia, Britain, all the leaders, they're all out for themselves.
Yeah, well, maybe we're going to stop doing government man's way and start living our life God's way. And lo and behold, won't we be surprised when all these blessings start raining down upon us?
Let's go to Troy, truck driving in Maryland. Troy, you're on with Rabbi Yes. Go ahead, Troy.
How you doing, George?
Good.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, you said there was no reference to the four horsemen of the apocalypse, but in the book of Zechariah, you got almost the exact same thing. In the New Testament, it says there's a black horse with a set of scales in its hand, and it says a measure of wheat for a penny, 3 measures of barley for a penny, don't hurt the oil in the wine. You got the red horse. It had a great sword in its hand and went forth to conquer. You got the white horse with a bow in its hand but didn't have any arrows. Then you have it's basically the chloros horse. It says pale horse, which I believe is these four horses are four spirits that have gone out into the world in the last days. In the book of Zechariah 14, it says there were 4 chariots, and the first chariot was drawn by 4 black horses. The second chariot was drawn by 4 red horses. The third chariot was drawn by 4 white horses. And the fourth chariot was drawn by 4 grizzled and bay horses, which actually is the same word translated chloros, which is the color green. Now, why have you researched that, sir, at all, or what?
Well, the point is like this. I'm not on the Coast program to attempt to discredit or anyone's religious beliefs and or make any effort to convert anyone to Judaism, because Jewish religion does not seek converts. I mean, that's a publicly known fact. What is known in Judaism is that we do not embrace any components that are referenced in the book of Revelation. We hold by the Jewish Bible, which is called the Torah, which includes the 5 books of Moses, the book of prophets, and the writings. And that's where it stops. Now, if there's a similarity, there's a similarity, but Judaism does not present the blood-curdling, terror-creating portrait of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that you'll find in the book of Revelations.
Okay, and does the Torah echo at all Genesis, fallen angels, and aspects like that, Rabbi?
Well, can you be more specific in your question?
I mean, does the Torah, does that include stories of, fallen angels, evil and things like that?
Yeah, well, this is very, very complicated. And I don't think I've got either the time or the ability to go into the high-end details of this with you. The basic Jewish conception of God is not at all similar to the perception of God from other theologies. For example, most people believe, most non-Jews believe, that God is involved in some kind of battle against an opponent in the spiritual realms. The essence of Judaism is that God is one, and that as much as good comes from God, what we perceive to be evil also comes from God, and that it comes from God to provide us with free choice to choose between good or evil in order that we can gain merit if we choose the good, or, as was done by Pharaoh, if we decide to choose evil, then we bring about our own demise. And I wanted to ask you a question. What
Sure.
percentage would you say of the world today, George, is predicated upon evil?
I think there are more good people than evil people, but I think evil controls 80% of things that are happening on this planet right now.
And isn't it interesting that we have a global economic collapse?
Yep. Probably done on purpose.
I'm of the opinion that this is a God-driven event in response to the fascination that people have with evil and the desire to self-aggrandize as opposed to humble oneself before our common God.
Is it a modern-day flood, a Noah's flood?
Oh, I'm so happy you brought that up. Give me half a second. We got a half a second here?
You got a half a second.
Okay. What was the primary deity of the country of Egypt? It was the Nile River.
Mm-hmm.
So people believed that the Nile River was their source of life. The Nile River, as the people of Egypt in those days of Pharaoh, did not even contemplate the idea that there was a creator who created the Nile River. They made an idolatry out of the Nile. They made a small g, a god out of it, and they literally worshipped it. What was the first deity that got whacked in the 10 plagues? It was the Nile River being turned to blood, right?
Right.
Can we say that the modern world has the same deity relationship, the same deification relationship as the Egyptians did with the Nile to the modern world's relationship to the pursuit of money?
Sure.
Uh-huh. And so if we have that degree of idolatry of money in operation, where do you think our common Father in heaven is going to give the first whack over the head?
Wall Street.
You got it.
Interesting. Next up, Bob in Stockton, California, west of the Rockies. Hey, Bob, go ahead.
Hi, Bob. No, I'm Bob. Hi,
You're Bob.
Hi, George. Just one word about you. You are so kind to all of these hosts or these guests that you have on your program. and I hope you never change. We are all lucky that you have such tolerance for some of the things that they say. Having said that, I don't know, we see what's going on. First with Judaism, my understanding is they got their Talmud and they got their Torah. And if Talmud, this is what the Rebbes are saying, if they think that they're right and God's wrong, then you should follow the Rebbe. That's number one. Number two, how can this man sit there and talk about holiness and that Judaism is going to be the guide with what these Israelis are doing to these poor Palestinians? And white phosphorus bombs, starving them. This is horrible behavior. So first, let's clean up. And I'd like to hear a defense from this Rebbe that this is okay for a greater ersatz Israel. And his hope or his belief that the United States is going to take on Iran for the benefit of a greater Israel is just so misbegotten and so intuitive to what he's trying to portray. And let's talk about the collapse, the so-called God-given event, that the collapse of Western civilization and the banking. If he knows anything about how the Federal Reserve was set up with Paul Warburg and Senator Aldrich and who they were agents for, the Rothschild family, and he understands that the Rothschild family is the one who underwrote the building of the Knesset with all of its awful symbolism, with Christianity at the base of the Knesset. And if he understands that symbolism, how dare he come on here and proselytize to other peoples in the world of a religion that decides that they are the chosen ones? I mean, they wrote the Bible. Of course they chose themselves. But really, and how does he? It's the whole idea of Christ that you treat others the way you want to be treated. That you do what you do to the least of us, you do to me. I mean, these are universal theories of justice and decency and mercy, as opposed to having a religion saying, "Oh, well, you follow the Noahide laws, and we can't tell you everything that's in the Talmud because." Under pain of death, if a Jew divulges some of these things, that it's just antithetical to openness, to decency, and I would just ask you...
All right, let's get his reaction to it, Bob, while we've got a few moments here. Go ahead, Rabbi.
Well, I've just heard a laundry list of accusations that have no foothold in reality. That's number one. The Talmud is available online on the Internet in English. Not being any kind of a concealed book of wisdom. It's been available to the public in English and translation and rabbinic commentary for at least since the early 1900s. So let's throw that one out the window. Number two, I can't recall every single accusation that he threw against me, but basically I'm detecting a negative energy where this gentleman is coming from. And I don't see any the love that he's talking about, I don't see it being shared, in this context with my appearance on your program, which was not of my own solicitation, by the way. I was asked by your producer to be on the program. I am not promoting anything in which the caller will not benefit as equally as I will.
Let me let you finish up when we come right back on that statement. Hold on. On our next Coast to Coast program, William Henry joins us. He's going to be talking about the Anunnaki and shape-shifting. That'll be on our next Coast to Coast show. When we come back, we'll take final phone calls with Rabbi Moshe Yes on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast to Coast. Rabbi, we'll let you wrap up on the rest of that other call before we go to more callers. Go ahead, I'll let you stay. Then I wanted to ask you about the Israeli-Palestinian situation later, and just to see if you think that will ever get solved. But
there's no question it's going to get solved. It's not going to get solved by the UN. It's not going to get solved by global diplomacy. It's not going to get solved by any military operation. It's going to get solved from one source and one source only, and that is our common Father in heaven. Because we know from fact, from our Torah teaching, that peace comes from God. And that's the only source where peace comes from.
And I would guess it's critical that region gets fixed if anything's going to move ahead, huh?
Well, I don't think that anything is going to be any kind of an obstacle to God's agenda. And I would like just for half a second to go back to the prior phone call and respond to it.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of got the impression that the caller was full of animosity and had an agenda of slander and listing his dislikes with things that relate to either Judaism or Jews. I don't want to take his free choice of thought away from him, but it might behoove him to look at that which he hates so intensely and see it from a loving position that apparently he was never privileged to.
One of his concerns was the Rothschild family. They were German Jewish bankers.
Yeah.
I think they continue to set policy worldwide, probably one of the richest families in the world ever.
Right.
But, I'm not so sure they practice Judaism.
Well, it's no secret that all of world Jewry is not 100% what would be classified as Orthodox religious, just as all Catholics are not, Orthodox Catholic or any other religion in the world. We have a good percentage and a growing percentage of Jews who are reconnecting with their religious tradition. And secularism has been a great disintegrating force in Jews being connected with their tradition. And what is coming up down the road, not a private Jewish party. The caller is going to benefit from the Messianic era as much as I am, and as much as you are, and as much as the Rothschilds are, or the Clintons, or President Obama, or anyone else. This is a transition in reality towards holiness brought about by God for the benefit of all mankind and getting us out of 2,000 years at least of every ism except obedience to our common Father in heaven.
Let's go to our Skype line. David is in Ontario, Canada. Hey, David, go ahead.
Hi, George. Hi, Rabbi. This is a real honor, George. I've been a long-time listener, and I'm so glad you've had this topic on tonight.
Sure thing.
My great-great-great-grandfather was a Calvinist, I should say. His name was Rabbi Soloveitchik, and he was doing quantum physics like 100 years ago. I followed a path that has taken me through Reiki and all sorts of different things, but what I've come to find on topic for tonight is that the basis of Judaism is pretty much the same as all the other basis of the other religions, where the only problem is with Judaism for the last 1,000 years, this knowledge has only been passed down to one person in each community. But now with communication and with understanding, things such as the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov and mystical Judaism, it's equal to Sufism, it's equal to the best of Buddhism, it's equal to the best of Taoism. And what it all comes down to is, and as a Chabadnik, you know this, prayer are not the words that you say. Prayer is the feeling that you have and projecting that feeling. The monks in their chants, they're working on that feeling. And there are certain synagogues and groups in Judaism that say, if you don't feel it, there's no point in doing it. So in getting to that point, now with all the ways of accessing the Theta state and higher states, and you've had all these guests on, George, God bless you, anybody can access this, and the beautiful thing now is that this knowledge is coming out. And you know what? If I had known this 30 years ago, the world had known this 30 years ago, I doubt that there would have been any Jews that have left to go and seek out ashrams or Hinduism or anything else, because it's such an incredibly beautiful and very, very esoteric group of teachings.
Okay, very good, David. Do you any need to react to that, Rabbi?
No, I didn't hear any question. And the man mentioned the Baal Shem Tov, who was the founder of Hasidic Judaism. And we know from our teachings in Chabad that Hasidic Judaism is predicated upon Lurianic Kabbalah, and that is Judaism's delivery system for the Messiah and the Messianic era. Appears to be unfolding right now.
I want you to review a little bit again for us, for people who might be popping in right now, about the prophecy of Rabbi Schneerson and some of the signs that are out there. Go ahead.
Right. Okay, thank you. Rabbi Schneerson said these explicit words in Hebrew, and I want to do it in Hebrew first with an English translation, explanatory, if I may. Rabbi Schneerson's exact words were, La'alter l'geula, hine ze Mashiach ba. And here's the basic translation. Immediately to the redemption, behold, with an exclamation mark, there, with an exclamation mark, the Messiah approaches. That's the translation. What was very unusual about this is that the Rebbe qualified this as a clear and certain prophecy. We all know Judaism 101, that prophecy comes from one source, and that's our common Father in heaven. We know from 40 years of having watched Rabbi Schneerson's leadership, spiritual leadership over world Jewry, that he demonstrated prophecy on many occasions, and each prophecy that was revealed by him never had an event that followed that was not congruent with the prophecy, meaning he had a 100% accuracy record with his prophecies. He told us, actually, to tell you the truth, George, when the Rebbe said those words, behold, the Messiah is coming, that was very close, by the way, to the time frame of the downfall of the Soviet Union, which is another collapsing of the nations, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, we didn't pick up on that at the time. At least I didn't. All we knew is that America was in a competition with the Soviet Union, and President Reagan outspent the former Soviet Union. Soviet Union collapsed. A bunch of Jews got out of the Soviet Union who were forbidden to leave for some 65 years. They returned to the Holy Land, and the Christian right is most aware of this Messianic era unfolding specifically because Jews have fulfilled the biblical prophecy of returning to the Holy Land. So, I mean, we just got a nonstop list of events.
Did the clock start in 1948?
No. As a matter of fact, it did not.
It did not. Okay.
No, I mean, one would tend to think that way. I want to share with you that I am, what's the word? I have a torn heart in my personal relationship with the state of Israel. I personally want the state of Israel to evolve into the absolute Holy Land, where the focus of the government is on fulfilling its spiritual obligation. We're not able to get to that point yet due to all the pragmatic problems that are surrounding that country. But that is where this is headed to. We are all headed to a world that will be 100% saturated with holiness. And one last point that I didn't bring up, it comes from Isaiah 60 as to how big this transition is. Isaiah references a comment from God that says, I will make a new heavens and a new earth. And I consulted with a great sage in Jerusalem, and he told me that that is understood literally, meaning that as we understand the world right now, the fundamental orientation that we have to reality is going to change before our eyes. And what we see as the physical world is going to become translucent, and it's going to reveal the divinity which brings the physical world into existence through divine speech.
Rabbi, is there any reference at all in the Torah or the Talmud about whether we're alone in the universe, that there could be others out there? Does it make any reference like that?
Yeah, let me give you two things that I know about. Number one, a great rabbi, Arty Kaplan, I think was his name, wrote an article on it, and there is a reference in Talmud to a planet called Horas, and there's a reference to the possibility of there being inhabitants there. The other one came from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, whom I've been speaking about this evening, and he was asked this specific question about life in the universe, and the Rebbe informed us that the only life in the universe would be microbial life other than life on our planet. So take your pick.
Okay. I'd like to pick the first one. Toyabe Forest, Nevada. Michael's with us on Coast to Coast. Go ahead, Michael.
Hello. First of all, I'd like to thank Coast to Coast and you for George for all the great shows you have.
Thank you.
I studied for a little while under a Rabbi Ben Yeoman Field, whose teacher was, I believe, the Rabbi Schneerson, and he probably doesn't remember me as a good student because I argued a lot with him. I learned a great deal. I'd like to find out what the prophecies are, predictions regarding the relationship with the other traditions that you mentioned earlier, the Native American, Hindu, Christian, and so on. What sort of
similarities are
information?
there?
Yeah, what sort of information do we have about how some of the discrepancies involved?
Okay.
Well, it boils down to this. I am not expert in any of the other ethnic groups' understanding of what we'll call for right now the end of days phenomenon. What I find most fascinating, and as George has said frequently on his program, that he does not believe in coincidence, what I find most fascinating is that all these diverse groups that are not related, and there's no cross-pollination necessarily, all of these diverse groups are having an awakening that something very dramatic is poised to happen. And they're all relating to it based upon their traditions. The Native Americans have the white buffalo prophecy. You can look that up in Google. It's entirely fascinating. I found 18 pages on that. And it very much echoes the idea of a perfected world. And I believe that a perfected world is common to many, if not all, of these end-of-days traditions that other ethnic groups have.
Very good. Next up, thank you. Michael, thanks for your phone call, by the way. Linda in Rochester, Vermont, east of the Rockies. Hey, Linda, go ahead.
Hi, how are you doing? I want to thank you for your show.
You're welcome.
I believe a lot of what the rabbi has to say, and I have a special gift myself where I can channel, and I have been communicated with, and we do have a new world coming to us, and the main thing is there is one God, one creator, and I do believe peace on earth has a lot to do with it. And also, I've come to a conclusion, a big conclusion, with the Illuminati having control of things like Windows. If you look at the word itself, that they're watching every single one of us. They are looking for the gifted, and there are gifted. You look at Facebook, and it's all associated, and we vent on Facebook, and we're all being watched.
Sure.
And these people have big control, and these are the people with the money. However, these people with the money are not the people that God looked to get the messages across to the correct people, which are people that are in need. I, being one of them, was a white slave for the government growing up in foster care. And I have a very strong connection to the divine. I also have a daughter that is a reincarnation, born exactly when Princess Diana was passed over.
Interesting.
I am very gifted with this daughter of mine. I'm very gifted with my connection to the divine. And there is a new world to come. And as far as religion, it's basically all trying to get along as one, live and let live, believe in who your God is, and leave it alone. My family, my dad, my grandmother were Catholic, and I have been told through my Creator there's a lot of scriptures that have been buried. They've been hidden from the public society, and that is one of the biggest religions to go down first. And we all know that there's a lot of bad things that have been done, and that it's basically having an open mind, loving one another, and accepting one another. And I look at these people like the Illuminati that have all the monies, and they're capable of doing what they feel like they, I want to say, have a connection to the divine. However, there's been a lot that's been done to deceive us, the general population, that it's more or less looking at the basic general person.
Well, I've got to tell you, Linda, your message is not that far off than from what Rabbi Yes has been talking about for so long. Rabbi, she's kind of close, huh?
Well, I go up to, I think I have somewhat of a different orientation. I don't see the world as being mastered by the Illuminati, George. I see the world having a master, and he is our common Father in heaven, who controls the fate of all of us. Now, I understand why people would be prone to thinking that there is some kind of one world government global conspiracy.
Sure.
But the very nature of that, by its definition, does not really reveal a holiness agenda. It represents a dominance agenda, and that is not what the Messianic era is about. It's not about one group having their thumb over any other group.
Not at all. Rabbi, I wanted to thank you. Hope you have a wonderful holiday this season. And
thank you.
Stay in touch with us, okay?
Thank you, George.
Rabbi Moshe Yes. His website is rabbiyes.com. It's spelled RABBIYESS.com. It's linked up for you right now at coasttocoastam.com. We've got a full week of great shows for you in store. William Henry tomorrow as we talk about the Illuminati and shape-shifting reptilians, ghosts and hauntings on Tuesday. We're going to talk about the upside and downside of cell phones and utilities and overexposure. Bob Curran joins us live from Ireland as we talk about man-made monsters, and then open lines again on Friday. For Jason Bowers, Dan Galanti, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladesseur, Stephanie Smith, Ross Mitchell, George Knapp, Ian Punnett, and Art Bell, I'm George Noory, somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe, everyone.